Hello everyone, Manic Monster Masher here with a video on the races of the New World. If you're confused, the New World is the campaign setting I am developing for my next D&D campaign after Curse of Strahd. It'll be my third D&D campaign I've run, and so I have a pretty good idea of what I want here. But today we're going to go over the fantasy races of the New World, or Earth, whatever we're calling it. Still haven't decided on what the name of the planet is. Anyway, we're gonna just go in the order that I have them written down here and just give a brief description. So, we're gonna start off with humans. The humans of this world are, basic humans. Any culture that you would find in 1800s Earth, you would find a human equivalent culture of. There is clearly, a Japan and a, America, England, the like. Since humans of this world are so similar to humans of our own world, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, so we're going to just move on to the next race. So next up I have is the elves. Now, the elves of this world are slightly different than the elves of other worlds. Originally, I wanted to have Thri-kreen in this setting, but I really couldn't find a niche for them, so I decided to combine elves and Thri-kreen into one race. The elves of this world are actually insects who have evolved via aggressive mimicry to look like humans. The most famous example of aggressive mimicry being the Eastern coral snake and the scarlet king snake, at least that I was taught in school. One is venomous, one is not. These creatures evolved to look like humans, but they are not in fact humans. They have pseudopupils, which is the type of compound eyes that praying mantises have. It makes them look like they have pupils, but they don't actually. Their exoskeleton is soft enough to pass as skin. Their lips and teeth are a pair of separate mandibles. So you have the lips, which is one pair of softer mandibles, and you have what we would call teeth inside of that, and those are another pair of mandibles colored white. I kind of wanted a species that was very uncanny valley type stuff, and this is interesting. I've always been fascinated with the idea of aggressive mimicry and how in your typical fantasy world, how would an elf and a dwarf and a human all evolve? Are the dwarves descended from Neanderthals? Are the elves descended from another evolutionary strain that just so happen to look like humans? I find that really fascinating. In terms of world building, but it's not a topic that's brought up very often, so I wanted to address it here. Their native country is old Europe, old growth forests type of stuff. They have their own special carve out in the kingdom, which I may or may not eventually. I may do a world map. I mean, it'll just be the same as our map, but with everything carved out. But remember, the focus of this is the frontier. Anyway, yeah, very uncanny valley. We're gonna move on. Next up I have are the dwarves. Now, the dwarves are your typical dwarves from other fantasy settings, Faerun, Tolkien dwarves, stuff like that. But the dwarves in this world are a people that were once humans who had to change their bodies via magic. A long time ago, a group of humans was trapped underground, and in order to survive their new surroundings, they changed their bodies using magic. By the time they made contact with the outside world again, they had built an entire civilization with over 9 kingdoms. Ruled by 9 dwarven kings. There is a dwarven kingdom directly under a large part of the frontier, and most of the other kingdoms are in old world, so like Europe, Middle East, Asia, that type of stuff. Other than that, typical dwarves, like foraging, like drinking, they have a little bit paler skin and bigger eyes, but other than that, they look like normal dwarves. Next up, we're going to go to the Gator Folk. So the Gator Folk are a race that have only recently made contact with the Republic and the world at large. The reason for this is that the Gator Folk live in remote swamps and bayous found in Florida and Louisiana. They live somewhat primitive lifestyles, but they find the culture and technology of other civilizations to be very interesting. They excel at druidic and voodoo magic. So these are your typical like swamp folk, I guess. That stereotype. They're also very accepting of other like cultures. Like they aren't super xenophobic. They find other people to be really interesting, which is a stark contrast to another species coming up here in a little bit, but we'll get to that in a second. Next up, I have the orcs. The orcs are, they're typical orcs. I couldn't think of a creative twist for orcs, to be honest with you. So I just went with the typical, part of a horde, go around and do stuff. I'm leaning on, and let me know in the comments what you think about the orc lore I'm coming up with here. But I'm thinking like maybe they once had their own like, Warhammer kind of war tribes, and they kind of got broken up as, society around them advanced, like the kingdom and the republic. It kind of led to them integrating more into society, kind of like how the Mongols of Genghis Khan and Jagatai Khan and the like kind of integrated into the societies that they conquered. Mongolian history is really interesting stuff. You guys should definitely read some of that. But that's kind of what I was envisioning for the orcs. They used to be, tribalistic conquerors, but they've kind of, in recent times, integrated into society. Other than that, they look like your typical orcs. Or your typical Faerunian orcs, I should say. Not Peter Jackson's orcs. Next up, I have the goblins. So, this is an interesting take that I've come up with the goblins, I feel. The goblins are a race of small cat-like creatures found in the jungles of what we would call South America. The social structure of a typical goblin group is several goblins following the leadership of the biggest goblin around. The biggest goblins are typically called hobgoblins. Live tribal lifestyles, like typical Faerunian-esque goblins, except they're little cat people instead of little goblins. I was really inspired by Ixalan's take of goblins, where they're like little monkeys. That's really interesting to me. Remixing a fantasy race like that, so that's where we are with that. Alright, so next up is the Minotaurs. The Minotaurs of the Himalayan mountains are a hardy people. Their civilization ranges from small tribes to several city-states. But one thing that their culture all share is a general disdain for all non-Minotaur races. This ranges from casual racism to death cults that sacrifice non-Minotaurs to dark gods. While most Minotaurs never leave home, Minotaur adventurers, mercenaries, and merchants are fairly common sight across the world. So, very xenophobic, these Minotaurs. And, you don't have to roleplay your Minotaur like that. But as a culture, they're fairly xenophobic. You typically wouldn't see any non-Minotaurs in a Minotaur city-state unless they were some sort of invited guest or some sort of emissary or something. While these aren't necessarily the death cults would be definitely the bad guys, but Minotaur society in general is not good, but it's not like evil. Like, they're xenophobic, but they're xenophobic to the point of, like, not going, like, leaving other people alone. They don't actively seek the destruction of the other races. Anyway, yeah, that's Minotaurs. You're probably thinking, why aren't they in Greece? Lore reasons that I will get into eventually. The last race I have is the Warforged. I think I might change the name, but, you know, in terms of D&D being able to recognize, we're going with Warforged for right now. The Warforged are the newest race that has appeared on the planet. And I'm just going to read this little backstory that I wrote, so just bear with me here. 77 years ago, a strange object fell from the sky. This object was a surprise to astronomers in the Republic. They were able to deduce that it fell somewhere in the frontier desert. A year after this event, the first Warforged showed up in a town named Roswell in the frontier. This creature spoke with the residents, asking for parts to fix its master's ship. The residents were confused, as Roswell had no body of water nearby, and also confused as the human-shaped creature appeared to be made entirely of machinery. While rare, Warforged wander the world seeking appropriate replacements for their master's ship. Some have given up and wander the earth seeking purpose other than their programming. So, yes, Warforged are made by aliens. And how aliens can exist in a fantasy setting is something I'm going to go over probably in the next video, and that's going to be the world's placement in the D&D multiverse and how this planet functions. Those are all the races I have, or species if you will. If you have any other cool ideas, be sure to put them in the comments. Remember that they have to be vaguely Wild West themed. Well, I mean, not always. Like, the elves clearly are not Wild West themed. But I'm open to cool ideas, so put those down in the comments. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. Sorry it's a bit of a short one. I am in the process of moving, so haven't had a lot of time to make videos, but hope you all having a good day, and whatever your favorite YouTuber says at the end of their videos, pretend I said that. Thanks.